Hello, I'm going to be whiteboarding out this problem because a lot of people got it wrong on the quiz. So first I'm going to go through the breadth first search because not everybody got that. And then I'm going to go through the A-star search because only 3 people got that. So y'all need to know how to do it. So first I'm going to go through the breadth first search. I'll kind of take it a step at a time. So the way that breadth first search is similar to the way the wavefront problem works. So you start out, this is the root node, and then the goal node I circled twice just for complete clarity. So you start out here, and then you kind of go out in waves. You go out one from everywhere you can in the source, and so the wave kind of goes out like that, and then you go out again as far as you can, like that, and then the last wave is there. So that's the kind of general propagation of how everything works. So you start at the source node, and then the way that this is all set up is it uses a queue structure, and the way a queue structure works is you put stuff in to the tail. So if this is your queue and it has stuff in it, you put stuff in like this, and you take stuff out like that. Okay, bang, that's a queue. Okay, so here's how we're going to do our search. We start out at the source, so we put that in our queue because it's the first node, and so that's just how we start. Okay, so now we go and we take the first thing in our queue, and we check if it's the goal. It's not. So since it's not the goal, we expand it. And we expand in alphabetical order. And the professor defined what alphabetical order meant on the quiz. He specifically said it means if it comes first in the alphabet, then it goes first. A lot of you didn't do that, so there's a link in the description to the alphabet, in case any of you were unclear on that. So anyways, so you expand out S, and we add in C, E, F. So in alphabetical order, C, E, F all get added to the queue. Bang. Okay, so now we go to the first element in the queue. This is gone. We don't care about it anymore. So now we're at C. So we check to see if C is the goal, and it's not. So we expand it out, and C is connected to A and B. And so in alphabetical order, A comes first and B comes second. Shocker. So we expanded this, so it's gonzo. And then we add A and B to the queue structure. Okay. And so next, the next item on the queue is E, and we check if E is the goal, and it's not. So we expand it, and E is connected to C. So we expand that out. Or, well, no, we don't expand it out because C already got expanded. So we don't expand it out again. We already touched it. We add some kind of thing in our code that checks to make sure before we expand things out if it's in some kind of visited queue, which it is. So E goes to C, also goes to S, same kind of idea where we already expanded those nodes, we don't touch them, we don't add them. That's just kind of the way it works. So E is off the queue, so now we go to F. And F is connected to B and D. So B has already been added to the queue, so we don't have to really worry about it. So now we add D, and F is gone. Okay, and now A is at the head of the queue. So we check to see if A is the goal node, and it's not. So we pop it off the queue. And then A kind of gets expanded into Z. And so we add that there. Cool beans. So Z is the goal, but we haven't actually gotten around to checking it yet, so we don't actually stop. Well, so there are certain versions of the algorithm where as soon as you touch the goal node, you stop. It kind of matters how you implement it. If you do your checking the way that I've been doing it, like when you expand things, or, as soon as you add it, it doesn't really matter. So if you stopped here, then you got full credit and you listed all of these things out. But if you kept going the way I'm going to keep going, it'll last like 2 more seconds, then you also got full credit. So we popped A off, we did that, awesome. So now we're at B. And so B goes to G, so we pop that off. It's not the goal, and then we add G. And then we're at D, because that's at the head of the queue. We expand it, everything else has already been expanded, so we just pop it. And then we get to Z, we check to see if Z is the goal, and it is, so we stop. So you got full credit if you listed out S, C, E, F, A, B, D, Z, and then you also got full credit if you added the G. So that's the breadth first search. And then the path that gets returned is, so you go all the way down this. The path that gets returned is, so you got, so we're at Z, and we got to Z from A, and then we got to A from C, and then we got to C from S. So the path that gets returned is SCAS. And then if you want to calculate the path cost, the path from S to C is 3. The path from C to A is 1. And the path from A to Z is 7. And 3 plus 1 plus 7 is 11. That was the answer to the first 2 parts of part 2 on the quiz. So now I'm going to be doing A-star search. You'll see I added the heuristic values to the nodes as a subscript, which is fun. So before I get into that, I'll just do kind of like a little high-level description of why A-star is good. So say we have this graph, right? We have a start and we have a goal. And then there are 2 different ways you can get there. The first way has a path cost of 1, and the second way has a path cost of 2. So if you wanted to do a greedy search, you would take the shortest path and you would go that way. And that is having no knowledge of the graph. You have no knowledge of the graph here, only that the goal exists and that there are 2 ways you can go at this step. But say the graph looked like this. Where if you go this way, the goal is right there. The total path distance is 3. But if you go this way, say it's some just chain of ones that keeps going and going and going. It could go for 10, it could go for 100, it could go for 1,000. And the total path cost going this way would end up being much larger than 3. It could be way larger than 3. But because you had no knowledge of what the graph looked like out in the future, greedily, you're just going to go that way, which is bad. So what the idea of a heuristic adds, or what the idea of an informed search, it adds this heuristic value, which is some kind of estimation of how close you are to the goal. Which means that in this case, whatever number we put here, so we put, 1. I'm just pulling these numbers out of thin air. The heuristic value here would be much larger. It would be like, for example, 10. So then when you're doing an informed search, you would say, okay, I'm going to consider the path cost here, and I'm also going to consider the heuristic value here. So, and then if you do the same over here, you say, oh, well, this path cost might be small, but this heuristic value is large, which indicates that it's not a good long-term decision. The heuristic value indicates if taking that path is a good long-term decision, if it will have reward in the long run. And then you would choose this way and you would be fine. So that's kind of the big picture idea of why heuristics are useful, which means that it's good that you know how to do an A-star search. And only 3 of you got this. Only 1 of you got it completely correct on the quiz, but only 3 of you got the path correct. So shout out to those people. You guys make my life better. Okay, so now we're gonna walk through how to do this. So we start out same as before with the root node, S. And then there's no path to get to S because S is just at the beginning and it has a heuristic value of 8. Cool. So also up here we're going to have this visited set. I'm going to call it V. And whenever we expand a node, we're going to put it in that set. And then once something is in that set, we no longer add it to our tree. It'll make sense as I go. Okay, so we start at S. We check to see if S is the goal. S is not the goal. So we expand it out. And we put it in the visited set because we've visited it officially. And we're going to expand it out to C, E, and F. C, E, F. And so the next thing we're going to do is just calculate the heuristic values at this point. So to get to C, the path is 3 and the heuristic value is 5. So this would have a value of 8. To get to E, the path is 2 plus the value at 2, which is 6. So E also has a value of 8. And then for F, the path to get there is 1 and the value at F is 6. So the heuristic value here is 7. So now these are the leaves, and you can think of them as the frontier. So we decide what to expand out next by looking at which one has the smallest value. So F has the smallest value. So I'm just gonna, so that it's easier to trace out the path of what got expanded in what order, I'm just going to kind of put a 1 here because we expanded this guy first. And now we're gonna expand this guy out second. So that's what those numbers mean. Okay, so where does F point to? F points to S because these are directionless arrows. So F points to S, it points to B, and it points to D. But S is already in our visited set, so we don't add that to the tree. We do add B and D. Okay, and then the values at these we need to fill in. So the value at B, the path cost is 1 plus 5, which is 6, plus the value at B, which is 9, if we add things up. And then if we look at D, the path cost is 1 plus 4, which is 5, plus 4, which is also 9. And we expanded F, so we'll add it to our visited set. Okay, so now the frontier is all of the leaves of the tree, and the way that we decide what gets expanded out next is by the next smallest. So 8 is the smallest value out of everything on the tree, and we're expanding things in alphabetical order. Link to the details below, the description below, if you are having trouble with the alphabet. So we'll expand out C next. We'll add it to our visited set. So C points to S, it points to E, it points to B, and it points to A. So S is already in the set, E is not. B is not. And A is not. Okay, and the path to E along this route, so we have 3 plus 5, which is 8, plus 6, which is 14. 8 plus 6, is 14. Okay, so E has a value of 14, and we expanded this guy third, so I'll just take note of that. I'll put these in little circles, that way they don't get lost. Okay, so E has a value of 14. B, so we have 3 plus 3 is 6, plus the heuristic value at B, which is 9. So we have a B9 there. Okay, so now we have A, so the path to A is 3 plus 1, which is 4, plus 2, which is 6. Okay, so now these are all the leaves in our tree. Okay, so we expand out the smallest one, which is this one, A, 6. So we expand this one out. Okay, so A is going to get added here because we're expanding it. And A goes to C, it goes to B, and it goes to Z. So C is already here, B isn't, so we can add that, and then Z isn't, so we can add that. So this can go to B, and it can go to Z. Okay, so the value at B would be 3 plus 1 plus 1, which is 5, plus the heuristic value at B, which is 8. Okay, so, and then with Z, so the path, it's 3 plus 1 plus 7, which is 11, plus the heuristic value at Z, which is 0, so Z is going to get an 11. Okay, cool. So, just as kind of a note, even though we added Z to our tree, we don't actually check if it's the goal until we expand it out, which is very important because even though we got here to Z, it's not the smallest, it doesn't have the smallest value in the graph. And what that means is that if we took one of these other paths, right, then we might end up getting a value that's less than 11, which we will. Spoiler alert. So even though it got added to the tree, we don't stop searching. We keep searching, and we only count it as the goal when we actually expand it out, because that means that we've exhausted all of our options, and that is the new smallest way to get to that point. Okay, so these are all of the leaves are all of the nodes in our frontier. So the smallest one is B with a value of 8 and E with a value of 8. So B comes first alphabetically, so we'll expand that one out next. And it's the 5th one to be expanded, and we're expanding it out so we can add it up here to our visited set. And B, goes to a lot of places. So it can go to C, but we've already seen that. It can go to F, but we've already seen that. It can go to D, which we haven't seen. So, okay, so there. It can go to G. And it can go to A, but A is already in the visited set. So it can go, and I'll just rearrange this that way it's easier. D and G. Okay, so the value at D along this path is 3 plus 1, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5, plus 2, which is 7, plus the heuristic value 4, which is 11. So D has a value of 11. And then if we go to G, we have 3 plus 1, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5, plus 3, which is 8, plus the value at G, which is 1. So that's 9. So G has a value of 9. Okay. So now these are all of the leaves in our tree, everything that's underlined. It represents the frontier. So the next node that we expand is the smallest one, which is this node up here, E. So this is the next one to be expanded. It's going to be the 6th one. And we're going to add it to our visited set. Okay. Now E can go to S and it can go to C. S and C are already in our visited set, so we count it as it's not in the frontier anymore. It can't be expanded anymore, so it's just kind of like a dead leaf. And the fact that it's not underlined anymore symbolizes that it's no longer in the frontier, and the fact that it's in the visited set. Okay, so we did that. So now we're going to look in our frontier and we're going to see what's left, basically. So 9 is the next smallest number that we're looking at here. So if we go in alphabetical order, we have this B, this G, this B, and this D. So how do we pick? We pick by alphabetical order. So if we go in alphabetical order, B comes first, but B is already in the visited set, so we don't do that. So what are we left with? In fact, I'll cross that guy out just so that we don't get distracted. So now what's left? We have G with a value of 9, and we have D with a value of 9. So D comes first alphabetically, so we're gonna cross that one out next. We're gonna expand D, add it in over here, and then it's, I think, the 7th one to be expanded. So where does D go? D goes to F, it goes to B, and it goes to G. So F and B are already in our visited set, so D goes to G. And it has a value of, okay, so S to F, 1 plus 4, which is 5, plus 4, which is 9, plus the value at G, 1, which is 10. So we put a 10 here. And it's part of our frontier. So now our frontier is this E, this D, this G, this Z, and that G. So out of all of the things in our frontier, G is the smallest. So it's the next one to get expanded out. So we expand it. We add it to our visited set. So where does G go? G goes to D, which we've seen. It goes to B, which we've seen. And it goes to Z, which we haven't visited yet. So then I'm just going to have it go like that. So what's the value at Z along this path? 3 plus 1, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5, plus 3, which is 8, plus 1, which is 9, plus the value at Z, which is 0. So now Z has a value of 9, and it's part of the frontier. So now, out of everything in our frontier, Z is the smallest. And so we check to see that it's the goal. I haven't explicitly been saying, but as I expand everything out, we check to see that it's the goal. Just nothing has been the goal. But now, when we go to Z, before we expand it, we check to see that it's the goal, and it is. So that means that we return the path up to the root. So just to sum up, the order of the nodes that we expanded, which is the answer to part C, was S, F, C, A, B, E, D, G, and then Z. And then the path, if you just walk up, is, so if we walk up, so the path is S, C, A, B, G, Z. S, C, A, B, G, Z. And then if you walk along this path, the total path cost is 3 plus 1. Actually, it's 9, right? Because the heuristic value there is 0, and we already calculated it out. I mean, I'll do it again. It's 3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 3 plus 1, which is 9, which is smaller than all of the other paths. So that's how you do A-star search. Hopefully you should understand now how to walk through an example, why A-star is useful, because of that little example I gave you at the beginning with the infinite ones. So, yeah, rock on.